Welcome to Name 3 Songs. I'm Sarah Fagan.
I'm Jenna, and this is a podcast where we discuss feminist issues in music and pop culture, all while empowering fangirls.
Because let's be honest, fangirls knew about that band way before you did. We do have 2 new Patreon members to shout out. So Katie and Kylie, thank you so much for joining our Patreon. I hope you're enjoying our back catalog of bonus episodes. Any more of you are interested, you can get old Music Meltdown episodes and other bonus content, as well as access to our Discord server over at patreon.com/name3songs.
And before we get into everything today, we did ask on our Instagram stories what you guys want us to talk about. And we're going to be doing this more where we put up like the question box on our Instagram stories. So please come follow us on Instagram at Name3Songs, and you can tell us what you guys want to hear us talk about, because sometimes there's things on our radar but we don't think it's that important, or we don't know how many people are really interested in it, so we would love to hear what you guys think. And one of the responses that we got this week was someone asking us to talk about Hannah Ewan's book Fangirl, Scenes from Modern Music Culture, which we did talk about in the very OG days of Name 3 Songs, all the way back in the year 2020. That's right, folks. We've been doing this for a hot minute. This episode is in November 2020 if you want to scroll back and find it. It's called Confessions of a Fangirl, Tales from Hannah Ewan's Fangirls, in which we talk about like our favorite moments from the book and our learnings, etc., etc. And more recently, in August of last year, we did have Hannah on the podcast, which is really awesome. And in that episode, we got to talk about this article that she had written for Rolling Stone about pop stars who are now in their 30s and how they're claiming their power in their 30s. And historically, we haven't seen a lot of pop stars reach that age in the limelight and still be celebrated to this degree. So it's a really fascinating and honestly a really empowering episode. So highly recommend going back and doing a little deep dive if that's something you guys want to hear about.
And speaking of our Instagram story, we also decided what to talk about today based off of the ridiculous outpouring of, yes, please talk about this, in our Instagram poll, asking if you guys were tired of us talking about the Taylor Swift Matty Healy drama, because we never know if we're talking too much about one specific pop culture moment. But with the recent release of Taylor Swift and Ice Spice's collab remix of Karma, and Matty Healy's tie-in to Ice Spice by being on that podcast and like agreeing to them saying offensive shit about Ice Spice and like all of the drama going on there, it feels like a very big pop culture moment that like we can't ignore, no matter how tired we may be from being in the Taylor Swift trenches the past month and a half of our lives. But you guys overwhelmingly voted to have us discuss that today, so we are going to be getting into that later on in today's episode. But of course, as per usual, today we are starting with fangirl moments, and we're having a deeper conversation about what it's like to see your favorite artist live and the parasocial relationship that you have when like it's a big like arena touring artist. Once again, we have a great week for fangirls, specifically Jenna and her fangirl behavior.
Specifically me? No. Okay, look. I got to see my favorite K-pop boys Tomorrow by Together 2 nights in San Antonio. I did have my YN moment, so cute. But the joke that I was going to make on this podcast this week is that like we both had very fangirl experiences this week. Me, and that I got to see my favorite boys. Sara, and that she was making up Taylor Swift conspiracies on the internet, which I never thought would leave my mouth, except that was gonna be my joke. Except that last night, Friday night, not only is Harry Styles filling the For You page, also Louis Tomlinson is his first night of tour, and he's covering 505 by Arctic Monkeys, notably Sarah's favorite band. So Sara was in complete chaos last night.
Yeah. Okay, way to just like make this about me.
We're gonna put Sara on blast.
Way to make this about me.
I'm just saying we both had very big fangirl weeks, but it's just like, it's so, you guys, I don't think you guys understand. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know, but like the combination of Louis Tomlinson and Arctic Monkeys like together is like Sara core. It's like, it's just like Sarah's starter pack 101. Like, so I knew, like when she sent me that, I was like, holy shit. I was like, she's gonna make me melt. We like FaceTime. We're just like crying on the phone. It's so funny.
Well, it's also like I woke up on Friday morning and I'm like, okay, I guess I need to listen to this Ice Spice Taylor Swift remix. And instead, I opened Spotify, and Spotify's like, Faith in the Future bonus edition. And I'm like, excuse me? Bonus of what? And like Louis, without telling anyone, was just like, here, have 4 bonus songs on me.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Yeah, yesterday was chaotic because I was just thinking about the set list and like his show last night, all the videos coming out. Like,
yeah, I mean, oh my God, yesterday was a good day to be a Louis girl. Like, let me just say that. I mean, the set list is incredible. For like the 3-song encore plays Where Do Broken Hearts Go, which is also like a god tier One Direction song. So, you know, somebody just needs to start singing Change Your Ticket, and I will. I don't know what I'll do with myself.
I will say that Harry Styles on the For You page, you know what? I didn't care as much before, but for some reason this time around, I think it's because I'm in like my own fangirlness, and I'm like, oh, here's Harry. Let me send this to Sara. Like, he's being real cute on stage.
Well, I think also, you know, he's playing Stockholm Syndrome. So like now we just all have Stockholm Syndrome. No, I mean, I don't know. I feel like he's being like extra cheeky lately. And I'm like, all right, Harold, calm down.
No, he's being real cute.
It's okay.
I just like don't I don't I don't know how to like, I don't even know where to start with like my own story of seeing TXT because my life has been literal chaos since Tuesday. Like, no, this whole week. Sara, can you help me? Where do you want me to start?
Oh my God. Well, okay. So from the Jenna's friend perspective of all of this, there's been like this huge buildup of Jenna getting to go see TXT because this is like her favorite K-pop group. And it's been really fun for me personally to experience because throughout all of mine and Jenna's friendship, like we've both been very much like out of our fangirl phase, really, because of doing music journalism and photography and all that sort of stuff. A lot of the like mystique around these artists kind of disappears, as we've talked about before, like in older episodes of the podcast. And I just think it's really funny how since the podcast has happened, like Jenna's found K-pop, and then like obviously Harry Styles started touring again, and like when it comes to anything with One Direction, it's like a very different world than like the artists that like we would have been closely working with like when we were doing music journalism prior to COVID. And so it's like a whole different mindset like of caring about these artists and like the artists that like we might have liked and gotten to interview or like had close proximity to through photography or whatever, because it's like a whole different caliber. And also like, again, the whole boy band thing of it all, it's like they're literally created specifically for us and our enjoyment. And so it's a whole different world, and so it's been really fun to watch and experience like secondhand.
Me lose my mind.
Well, not even lose your mind, just like unabashedly love something and like not really care, like not feel so embarrassed about it. Like it's nice because no matter how much we talk about it, I feel like especially as professionals, we've been essentially kind of like brainwashed to feel like slight embarrassment of it, no matter how much we want to like own loving these artists. But it's just been like so fun because Jenna's like, I'm just gonna like go crazy and get floor seats and I'm gonna do everything. And it's like
I'm just having my YOLO moment. The funny thing is, like, you're saying this, it reminded me of when we had Lucy Ford on our podcast, and I don't remember the exact quote, but she was basically like, why would I be embarrassed about liking something that's made specifically for me?
Yeah,
she made good points. So I saw TXT 2 days. I had a floor seat for day one. I was like relatively close to like the center stage because they have like main stage, like a runway, and then like the center stage. So I was really close to the center stage, and then day two I had VIP and I was like closer to the main stage. Never in my entire life have I imagined being in this scenario, really, because it's like when I saw One Direction in 2014, I technically did pay for floor tickets. Like I bought resale floor tickets with me and like a few other girls from college, and we went and saw One Direction on the floor. But seeing one, like even just comparing boy bands, seeing One Direction on the floor versus seeing any K-pop show on the floor, I was just having this crazy, like, number one, it's that thing of realizing like, oh, this person's a person and they like exist and they're just a person. And like when they're on your screen and like everything that you're constantly being fed about them is just like they're cute and they're adorable and they're funny and they do this and you know all these things about them. Like the parasocial, especially with K-pop, the parasocial relationship is so strong. And then I saw them, I'm like, this is just a person. I was like, they're just on stage like doing their job. But the difference between that and One Direction is that the way I was like describing to Sara afterwards is that K-pop feels like it's 50% about the music and about the performance, and it's 50% about the attention and the interactions. Whereas like if I go to a One Direction show, like I never go to the show, or even if we're talking about Harry Styles like in the present day, I never go to a concert expecting the performer to interact with me. Even Harry now, when he's reading the signs, if I'm not taking a sign and I'm not in the crowd, I'm not expecting he's going to give me attention. And I'm not going into that like paying for it. Whereas like it feels like with K-pop, part of what you're paying for is the fan service. And it just like, I was just like having this like existential crisis on day one, because I'm like, I've never been to a show like this where like, the other thing is like, if you want attention from the members, you kind of have to like go out of your way to make yourself known. If you're just standing there or you're just recording, they're not gonna like engage with you. But if you have a sign, if you're like throwing up hearts at them, like asking for like a half heart, like if you're, I don't know, like jumping around, dancing, like going really crazy, they're gonna give you attention because you're more noticeable. So the first day I didn't have a sign because I was like, what am I supposed to write on a sign? I was just like, this feels silly. And I was by myself, and like the people on either side of me like weren't very outgoing. So they were also like quite quiet and like subdued during the concert. And so I felt, I don't know, it was just so wild. And like at one point, like they do this thing where they like call out fans in the crowd and they have this little dance that they made up and they want fans to do the dance with them. And so then they put a spotlight, they pick out people in the crowd, they put a spotlight on them to do the dance, and they're up on the big screen. Like I knew they were going to do this, whatever. At one point, all 5 members are like in my corner of the stage, like looking for who they're gonna put on the screen, and they're like straight up just all like staring at like my section on the floor. And I was like, don't look at me, like do not perceive me, like I don't want to be seen. And then they picked like some other people who were like higher up than us, but it was just so wild of like, I wasn't expecting that they like were actively going to be looking at me.
It's so interesting. Because like you were saying before with like the One Direction shows or Harry shows, it's like unless you're like relatively close and like have a sign, you're not expecting Harry to like acknowledge you. And I think it's so interesting because like from what you're explaining to me, it's like no matter where you're sitting in that venue, like there's going to be fans trying to get the artist's attention. And I feel like when I saw Harry, I wasn't on the floor. So absolutely nobody around me was like expecting Harry to be like, oh, like I see you up there, like whatever, like nobody's doing that. And so I just think it's so interesting because it's like, it's not like anybody around me like wasn't having a fucking blast or like losing themselves to the music and like screaming about like whatever Harry was doing. But it's like, I couldn't imagine being like in lower bowl at like a venue and like still be like yelling like Harry, like trying to get his attention. But it sounds like in K-pop they are doing that, and the K-pop idols potentially will actually interact with people who are farther away as well. So it's like every single fan in that venue is stressed out. No, even people in like the 100 levels who like if they bring signs like, and the other thing is I'm always like, can they see that far, you know? But when they put the house lights up, because I was on the floor, I was really close to the stage, so I was looking around at the signs in like the 100 levels, I could read all of them, and I'm like, that means they can also read all of them. So like legitimately they can see the fans in those sections. But the thing was like they were like purposefully looking at the fans like in between dancing. Like, because some songs they're doing like full choreo and sometimes they're more just like singing and just like doing whatever, but they like purposefully look at the crowd to see who wants to interact with them. And I was like, no, I was shook. I was like, don't look at me, like what are you doing, do your job, like. And so that's the thing is like going into day 2, I was also like, I have no idea if my seats are going to be actually good or not. I was like, I thought they might be, but I was next to the main stage. It was not the floor and it wasn't the 100 levels. It was like kind of like an in-between level where I was like literally next to the main stage. My seat was on the aisle. Like there's no one. So I'm basically like quote unquote barricade for like
adjacent to main stage. So I was like, they'll probably like see me at some point, but also like they were at the center stage so much that I was like, I'm gonna be like watching the big screen or like their backs like a lot of the show. Yeah. And then they would come up to main stage for like a little bit. But going into day 2, I was like, all right, you know what? Like I had my day 1 experience. I'm feeling kind of weird. This is the thing, is I'm like, I'm just here for a silly, goofy time. Like, I'm just here to live, laugh, love. We are YOLOing. Like, and day 2, I was with a friend. So I think that will, like, put me a lot more at ease of it's like, you know what? K-pop is silly. This is a silly, goofy time. This is meant to be fun. I don't need to think so deeply about these things. Yeah. Like, we're just gonna YOLO here. So I went into it in like literally like an easier mindset of like, we're just here to have fun. And I had the VIP, so we did the sound check, which is like they come out and do 3 songs, and like you're not supposed to record, and they're just like wearing their casual clothes, and they were so cute, and they had on their cowboy boots and their cowboy hats, and they were doing all this yeehaw stuff, and I was like, oh my god, I was like, sometimes I am so Texas. So then like the show's happening, and I had like a piece of paper and a Sharpie, like just in case I felt like writing a sign. And after the sound check, I felt like writing a sign. So I was like, all right, fuck it. Like we're just going all in at this point, because like, this is silly. Like this is so silly. Like me begging for attention. Like this is so silly. We're just here to have a good time. So I wrote like my little sign for my bias, Yeonjun. And I knew that the time when I was gonna be able to show it was like at the very, very end. They literally do like a 12-minute goodbye. Like it is the most funny, insane thing of like, they have like their encore songs, and like the final song, the fans are supposed to like sing along. And then there's like there's so much confetti everywhere. And then they literally take like 12 minutes to wave to every single person in that arena. And it's so funny because there's like kind of background music, but it's like super awkward background music. It's not like hype music. It's like you're maybe going to a spa type music. And it's just like at a weird volume, and they're literally just like waving to everyone, and then like sometimes saying bye in the microphones. And I'm like, this is so goofy. Like this is so silly. So anyways, they do their main stage goodbyes. Then I know they're gonna come over to like my side of the stage. So I'm literally like, here's me holding up my sign. This is so fucking silly. And then Yeonjun noticed me, and then I was like, was that at me? Like, did he notice me? And then I blew him a kiss, and then he blew me a kiss, and I was like, oh, he did notice me. How wholesome. But it didn't end there, because they go to the other side. They go to the right side, say their goodbyes. They go to the back of the stage, where they're like, there's like the screen comes up, and they step behind, and then, you know, the screen is gonna slowly lower, and they're gonna be gone forever. So I'm just like, I'm in the aisle, right? And I'm just like, we're here for a silly, goofy time. I'm dancing in the aisle. And I did not think that they were still like looking at me. But I like did this dance move that Yeonjun's been doing the whole tour, where he literally just like is thrusting his hips. And I wasn't even thinking. I just like did, like I wasn't, literally no thoughts, all vibes. I just like did the dance move. And then he did it back on stage. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, he just like, he did that like at me, like he copied me. So I did it again. He does it again. And I was like, is this a joke right now? The girls behind me are all screaming their heads off. And then he's kind of like looking other places, saying goodbye, whatever. But he keeps looking back, because like I'm still dancing in the aisle. And I'm at this point, I'm like, this is hilarious. Also, this man is known to like twerk a little bit sometimes on occasion. So I was like, maybe I can get him to twerk. So I was literally like throwing it back in the aisle. And he looks over again, and like literally the final goodbye was like, he motioned as if he was going to, and then like didn't, which I saw him do to somebody else on tour. And then like the screen closed, whatever. And it was so funny, because we were like, because of the angle of our seats, we could still see them like behind the stage. And so then Subin was like waving to us, and we were like being very aggressive about like waving to him as long as we could. So it was hilarious. And then I like looked around, because everyone was like, oh my god, like he noticed you. And people were like high-fiving me. They were like, congrats, like all this stuff. It was so funny. I was just like, at no point did I scream. I was just like, was that real? Like, did I make that up? Everyone was like, oh my god. And I was like, did anyone get a video of that? And like, they were all like, no. And I was like, cool, okay. Like, no one got a video, sick. So then like the next day, I'm just like scrolling. I'm like, somebody is gonna post a video of this ending. The next day, I finally found a video of like relatively like decent angle compared to like where I was, of Yeonjun. Like the goodbyes are happening, and he's like literally like throwing ass at me, or well, he was hip thrusting, whatever. And people in the comments were like, why is he acting up? Like, this is a sentimental moment. And that's the funny thing, is it's like the goodbyes are usually very sentimental, and they're just like, why did he do that? And so then I like went on TikTok and made my little explainer video being like, it was me. He did it because of me.
It was so funny, like, when you were telling me about this, because, like, from what Jenna's explained to me about K-pop is it's like saying they're very controlled feels icky because of, like, all of the stuff that people say about, like, One Direction being controlled or whatever, but, like, controlled in the fact of, like, it's very obvious that, like, they know that this is their job, but also like love every second of it, whatever. And so I was just saying, like, when Jenna was explaining this to me, I was like, if this was like the 90s and this was like Backstreet Boys or like 98 Degrees or something, I'm like, you would be standing there and some security guard would like come and be like, oh, Nick Carter wants to see you.
Oh my God,
but
stop.
Like, but seriously though, because like you're on the podcast being like, yeah, like they're usually like crying and you're like, no, this man saw me shaking my ass and was like, gotta shake my ass back. It's so funny.
He saw me from afar and he was so dazed.
but genuinely, that's what it feels like. Like I'm not trying to be like insane here, but it's so funny to me because it very much feels like if this was like any Western artist, it very much would have been like, oh, we're gonna go collect her for you.
Yeah, no, it is just so funny because it's like when I held up my sign and he like acknowledged my sign, like that was very much fan service of like I was asking to be acknowledged. And it's like it would, and not, they don't, obviously they try to read as many signs as they can, but like I also felt like it would have been awkward for him not to acknowledge my sign because I was like asking a question to him. And so like in his job, he like has to, and it's so funny because so many people bring signs that are like, be my boyfriend or whatever. And it's like, you would literally never do this in any other scenario, holding up a sign that's like, be my boyfriend. Like, and because it's K-pop, they have to be like, yeah, I'll be your boyfriend. Like, but it's like, even for Harry Styles, it's like, can you imagine, like, I feel like maybe this has been done. Maybe it has been. But even for Harry Styles, I just feel like it wouldn't be normal for somebody to bring a sign that's like, Harry, be my boyfriend.
Well, I think also it's interesting because from what you've said, it's not like they see a sign and like make it a joke on stage. It's like they see a sign and they like have a moment with that fan and like share that moment with that fan only. Meanwhile, like the whole point of a sign for a Harry Styles show is you're making a sign in hopes that
he's like writing a gossip newsletter
that you become part of the show. Like that's what it is it's like the hope is never mainly for like a one-on-one moment. Like obviously you see those videos where it's like, oh, like I made Harry laugh, whatever, but like even in that regard, it's like the signs are still there for his amusement rather than anything else. Because it's like all the girly pops are trying to like make Harry Styles giggle. Like they're trying they're trying to break him essentially. Like they're like, oh, like let's see who can like make Harry like forget a song lyric. Like, you know what I mean? It feels like it's trying to like create a moment for everyone. Whereas like when you're talking about the K-pop stuff, it feels like they're trying to create a moment for themselves. And so I just think it's really interesting, just like the differences in like how the shows work and all that stuff, because again I feel like obviously I've never been to a K-pop show, I don't understand it, but like in that regard, but like the way that you explain it, it feels very much like you're going to like an all-encompassing show in like a different way than when you go see a more Western artist, because obviously there's artists like Beyonce and Taylor Swift who have like their crazy stage setup and it is more of like a performance than just like going to listen to music. There's more to it than that.
I think there's always like if you think about someone like Taylor or Beyonce, it's like if you're on the floor, especially if you go in, you might have a hope that they're going to interact with you or they're going to see you or they're going to wave. But with K-pop, it's an expectation. And that's where it was kind of messing me up on the first day because I was like, this is so wild. Like I've never been to a concert where I'm expecting to get attention from the performer.
Yeah. And I feel like that's what was like so interesting also is in you and I talking about the shows and like why I thought it'd be fun for us to like talk about you seeing them more in depth is because like you had two very different
completely different experiences.
Just from like a Tuesday to a Wednesday. And a lot of it was like, I feel like also like going to a show by yourself when it's like a quote unquote new experience can feel a little bit stressful. But I think also it's like so much of the music that we listen to is like about the music and like barely about the artist. And the most you might be trying to interact is like when the show's over, like trying to get a drumstick or a guitar pick or something like that. But at no point, for example, for me, it's like in the last like 6 years, one of the few bands where I'm like going in the crowd to like lose my mind would be like when I see the Early November or the Starting Line. And at no point in me doing this and like screaming and like having a fucking blast in the pit am I like, oh my God, Kenny Vasoli is going to acknowledge me, this 40-year-old man I've had a crush on since I was 12. Like, no, that's not the point of me acting up in the pit to out of the Starting Line show. Whereas like when you're at the K-pop show, like you said, it's like you're going into it knowing that there kind of is the expectation from the artist that you're going to be begging for attention. And there's the expectation also that like the artist is going to be like wanting you to want to be begging for attention.
No, it's true, because there's even like I said, Yeonjun's been doing this like hip thrust like dance move the entire tour. He knows fans are gonna scream, and like some fans have like a very like I'm gonna pass out type of reaction. And so he does it. He's been doing it every single time. He's been doing it more and more because he knows fans go crazy for it. So like they definitely do things to like egg on the attention. But it is interesting because like my very final interaction with them when they were leaving the stage, I wasn't even really asking for attention. Like I was just like having a good time. And then he noticed me and I was like, what do you mean you noticed me? Like, I wasn't trying to be perceived. Like, and then I was just like, this is so crazy. Like,
well, I think also it's like you were doing a move that he does. So I think in his mind too, because again, like you're not trying, but also at the same time, it's like he sees that, acknowledges it as, oh, like that's one of my signature moves. That's for me. Let me respond. Because again, that's like how they're trained to have their mindset. But I also just think it's interesting because like we were saying at the beginning of the episode about how like working in the music industry and like the whole backbone of like how our podcast was started of like being a fangirl like has helped our careers in a lot of ways because we know like what questions people want to be getting answers to for interviews, and like we know all these sorts of things. And like I don't know, I feel like it's definitely beneficial to like care as much as we do about the music that we care about in our career path, because I think it also makes us like think more in a lot of ways. But also I think like with that mindset of like being so aware that these are just normal people at the end of the day, I feel like the K-pop of it all very much blurs these lines because it's so obvious because how much we know about like them going into training for years and like the fan service of it all and like all of these things that they do, that it's a job, but also they do like love their fans more deeply than like any Western artist possibly can, because they know that without the fans, there'd be no career. Meanwhile, I feel like there's a lot of Western artists who are like, I just make my music and I, whatever, like, you know, and there's kind of like this, I don't think that they ever mean to come across like this, but I feel like anytime I hear an artist being like, I'm just an artist at the end of the day, I'm like, stop being so fucking pretentious. Like, you wouldn't be here if I wasn't like paying your bills, which like feels bad to say, but it's like K-pop artists know and are aware and are like, I wouldn't be here if they weren't paying for me to be here. And just being a music fan in general and like feeling like, oh, they don't feel like they owe us anything, even though their whole career is because of us, and like all these sorts of things, and being like, okay, these are just normal people at the end of the day. And then going to see K-pop and being like, are they normal people at the end of the day? Because their whole life is like them being taught to be a K-pop star. And because they're being taught to be a K-pop star, it's like they don't really, from what I've learned from you, really, like they don't really have like that much of a life outside of it, it seems. Meanwhile, like we do get paparazzi shots of like Harry Styles and Emily Ratajkowski making out at a parking lot party, you know, like you're not gonna get that of a K-pop star. Like there is, it's and so it's so different.
It is different in that regard because you get so much of them through a relatively controlled image. Like from the company, they give you so much access to them. But then when it comes to their private life, there's a hard line where like if you saw Harry Styles on the street, you could go up to him and talk to him and get a photo with him, and he's always going to take a photo. If you see K-pop idols on the street, you can like say hi to them, but they're never going to take a photo. There's a hard line, and even within fandom culture, there's a hard line of like, if you see idols on the street, essentially you're supposed to leave them alone. Like, don't follow them, don't record them. Like, this is their off time, because they give so much to us when they are on camera and when they are on stage in all of these other scenarios. I do think it was very interesting, because just again, to reiterate, that day one mentality was like, I'm like, these are just people. Like, why would I beg for attention? And then day two, I was like, okay, no, like, this is a silly time. Like, the way this industry is made for fans, I'm like, this is a silly time. We need to have a good time. I need to not think so seriously about this.
Well, I think that also, like, from you explaining it to me too, it's like the first day, it kind of was like you had to come to terms with the fact that, like, this is a real person. Like, you know, like, that sounds really ridiculous when I say it out loud. No, it's true.
It's like, I see them on my screen all the time. It's so, like, I'm just like, you exist on my phone. Like, you don't exist in real life. It's so wild to see, because no other artist have I ever gotten as much content about them from. Than K-pop. It's so much online content. I'm just like, I know this person. And then you see them and they're like here doing their job, and you're like, I'm like, I don't know you. Like, this is so weird.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing, is it's like, you also have that mindset of like, they're here doing their job, and so you have to like come to terms with the fact, like, oh, like, their job is to cater to me. And like, but like, witnessing that in real life, like, I can only imagine like how jarring that must feel in a lot of ways, where it's like, because it sounds like such a different experience than any concert I've ever personally gone to. And so it's like witnessing that in real life, and kind of witnessing, like, I feel like it would be so weird to, like, again, using Harry as an example, because I feel like it's the closest thing that I might have to this, is it's like, I feel like it would just be so weird if I was like on the floor for Harry. I feel like my brain would malfunction if the person next to me the whole show is just trying to get Harry to pay attention to them. Like, I would just be like, why are you doing that? Like, he's literally singing Stockholm Syndrome right now. Like, why are you trying to get his attention? Like, let the man sing. But like with K-pop, it's like, that's, I feel like obviously it feels so much like they know exactly what they're doing and like how to function and like not break in the same way Harry does when you have like a silly little sign up. And like, you know, as I just like can't even imagine.
Because I saw BTS in LA for 2 nights. And then I saw TXT last year on tour, but I was like far away. Like, obviously BTS is playing in a fucking football stadium, so I was very far away. I was like, I'm here for a concert. And when I saw TXT last year, I was like close-ish, but not close enough that like I would have an individual interaction with them. Yeah. So this was like my first time where I was like literally close enough to like see them and to see that they're seeing me. Because that's the other thing, is I'm like, I just don't like arena tours and bigger, because I'm just like, if I'm going to be far away, I could just watch this at home. Like, I know that's kind of a dumb mentality, and like lots of people love going to these tours, but I'm like, if I'm there, I want to be able to like see them with my own eyes. So it was a very different experience, even from me seeing them a year ago.
It's so interesting to like think about, and just like, I've been thinking deeply about this since this happened for you, because this summer is like the One Direction girly summer. Because Niall's on tour, like, Louis on tour, and Harry's on tour for most of the summer. And I feel like each of their shows is like a completely different experience from each other. And it's also like completely different experience from One Direction. And also completely different from K-pop. But I feel like it's very much like feral fangirl summer in regards to like who is touring right now. And like,
well, and Beyonce's on tour, and Taylor's on tour.
Yeah. It definitely is like concerts are back in full swing, and it is interesting watching on the internet like how concerts have become like this spectacle compared to like how they were prior to the pandemic.
TikTok, man. TikTok. I know. You can see everything.
It's so,
all those people in the front row are posting their POVs.
It's so interesting. It truly is just like everyone's trying to get the best piece of content they can get, and not even just from live stuff, but also like in regards to like them preparing for the shows and like getting their outfits together. Like, I literally saw something where it's like, oh, like everybody has like their fits that they wear to Harry. Like for Louis, we should all dress like rock star girlfriends, and like that should be like,
for Louis, we should all dress like footballers who came out of a thrift store.
Literally, like when I saw this, and the girlies were like the girls who made the video were like, oh yeah, and they literally like made sketches of like outfits that people could wear for like this rock star girlfriend aesthetic. And I'm like, Louis never put more than 5 seconds of thought into an outfit.
He's wearing sweatpants and a polo shirt. Like, be for real.
It's just like this man was like, oh yes, I fucking.
They're probably like Gucci sweatpants too, you know?
I know. But he's like, I just really love Oasis. And it's like, I'm like, you're hot. Like, be hot. Like, come on.
He's taking the bloat core revival a little too hard.
It's just like so funny because it's like all these guys are like, oh, when I stopped wearing skinny jeans, and it like changed their whole fashion perspective. And Louis like, when I stopped wearing skinny jeans, and it's like Gucci track pants.
He's going like, he's verging on grandpa these days. I just feel like for the aesthetic he's going for, it could be done slightly better.
Yeah, like a little bit. It's so funny. Okay, we've fangirled long enough, I think, and we do have to talk about Taylor Swift again. I know I said we wouldn't, but we have to because
we put it. Look, guys, we debated whether or not we were going to talk about this. And the thing is, because sometimes we feel like this is going on for so long, like, is there other stuff we should be covering? But this is like the news of the century, number one, and there keeps being developments, number two. So we posted on our Instagram stories being like, do you guys want us to talk about this? 92% of you said yes. 92, okay? More than 50 people voted. So overwhelmingly, you demanded us to talk about this. So here we are.
Yeah, so, I mean, everybody with pop culture worms for brains has been in the trenches for over a month now, and I am tired of fighting for my life, and Taylor Swift is like, bestie, I'm so sorry, but here is more, and I'm also not sorry. So, in the middle of this week, we had Taylor Swift announcing on her Instagram, collaboration remix of Karma with Ice Spice was going to be coming out this past Friday, and that was a crazy announcement because of all the Taylor and Matty of it all. Because as we've already explained during a podcast episode that Matty was a part of, the two podcast hosts were mocking Ice Spice, and Matty just sort of sat there and laughed along and didn't have anything productive to say.
I mean, I would say he was also actively contributing to it.
Yeah. I mean, you're actively contributing because you're part of the conversation and not saying anything, like in regardless to like standing up for her. And then at a concert did his, I didn't think I was being offensive, but I'm sorry if I offended you. Ice Spice, I love you. Yeah. Like the most like bullshit, barely an apology that one could ever think of. But also like how is it an apology when you're apologizing live
at
during a concert across the globe from where Ice Spice is
in Australia?
It's like, I'm sorry, is the Bronx suddenly in Australia or Manila or whatever country they were in at that time? I don't think so. So it's kind of like a moot point, like him apologizing in that regard. And so we have Taylor announce this in like the most unhinged way. So number one, the Instagram image of this is literally like a fucking AI photo of Ice Spice and Taylor Swift, both in like full body suits, holding leashes around the moon and Saturn, which like, what the fuck does that have to do with karma? And Taylor's post is, so much to tell you. I'm a massive fan of this brilliant artist, and after getting to know her, I can confirm she is the one to watch. So delighted to say that Karma featuring the incredible Ice Spice will be out tomorrow night at midnight Eastern time as part of the new Midnight's Till Dawn edition deluxe album that you can pre-order now. So like Miss Capitalist Queen is in the past like 3 weeks has given us like so many random new drops of Midnights for people to buy. Like I'm talking different vinyl variations, different extended cuts. Like it's crazy. But also this post feels like a Mad Libs. Like it feels like she just filled in like just filled it in, and it just feels so chaotic. So at the start of this episode, Jenna said that I put on my conspiracy theory hat in regards to Taylor Swift, and I had a bit of a meltdown. And like my conspiracy theory hasn't changed, and I will get into this in a second, but there was like this clip from an interview or something. I don't know like what it was from, but Spotify posted this like 45-second clip of Taylor talking about like how this Ice Spice collaboration came to be. And Taylor was like, Ice Spice like reached out to me about a collaboration. And I will say, like, in the way the music industry works, and especially with the way that Taylor Swift works, it is very normal for artists' team to reach out and be like, is she planning to do any remixes? Can I get my artist on here? Like, I'm sure that Ice Spice wasn't the only person in Taylor's inbox being like, hey, we would love to be involved. So I just think that that's interesting because I feel like there was a lot of discourse around the fact that Taylor was having Ice Spice on this song and that it was weird because now Taylor's dating Matty and it feels like Taylor is trying to like do a lot of PR cleanup, because there have also been a lot of articles in regards to like Taylor Lautner making comments about the Speak Now Taylor's version. And then like there were some articles about like Taylor and Joe Jonas and like all of these like random articles of like throwback stories coming out to kind of try and bury Matty stuff, and Taylor and Matty headlines being like the first thing that comes up when you Google Taylor Swift. So it feels very much like Taylor, for some reason, is doing a cleanup for her new boyfriend.
But also like the fact that she had to go out of her way to make it known that Ice Spice reached out to me.
Yeah.
As if like, no, I'm not apologizing for Matty because I didn't reach out to Ice Spice. Ice Spice wanted to do this with me. Like she, like this did, like that information did not have to be known, and it was made known.
Yeah. And so again, like, this is why it feels very like, again, Taylor Swift, like calculated, like planning all these things where it's like, it's going like above and beyond to this point where it's like a little bit uncomfortable. And there's this creator on TikTok, her name is Matty Monologues, and she made this really interesting video about how Ice Spice being featured on this Taylor Swift song puts Ice Spice in this position where she's going to be forced by proxy to acknowledge the like Taylor Matty of it all, because like it's not like Taylor is going to be doing press to promote this in the same way where Ice Spice's team is going to be asked about it. Yeah, like Ice Spice, but also like Ice Spice's team, because she is a new artist, like a newer artist on the like on the rise, is like they're going to be sending out press releases. They're going to be trying to get interviews based off of her doing this collab with Taylor. And it's going to be a really good PR push for Ice Spice of being able to promote this song. But in her promoting this song, and because she is a smaller artist, there's going to be less leeway for her to be like, no, I don't want to answer this question. And so there's going to be journalists who are going to be like, how do you feel about working with Taylor now that she's connected to Matty, now that he was involved in this controversy connected to you? And so there's going to be this thing where like Ice Spice is going to have to figure out and plan how she wants to respond to these kind of questions when they do come up. And so rather than Taylor or Matty having to answer for anything, it's going to be Ice Spice having to answer for it. And like people are going to like always come back and be like, well, why do either of them have to answer for Matty? And it's because like Taylor is publicly connected to him. And like while Taylor isn't the one who was involved in that podcast episode, again, it's like any way to get somebody to talk about it, but also because it is so, they are so publicly out there right now and so publicly connected, like there's no other option. And so this creator, Matty, said that it reminded her where there was this controversy with Ariana Grande and 2 Chainz with her video for 7 Rings, because there is like this famous like pink trap house that 2 Chainz was like working really hard to save and had included in music videos that he had done in the past. And people were like, you literally stole this from 2 Chainz. And then rather than like acknowledging it, talking about it in public, instead, Ariana has 2 Chainz feature on a remix for 7 Rings. And then 2 Chainz, when he's promoting this remix, has to be like, yeah, Ariana and I are chill. Like, it's not a big, like, everything's cool here. And so it's like this uncomfortable situation where he now has to
do the accepting of the non-existent apology from on Ariana Grande's behalf.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't have to answer for anything.
Yeah, and so this creator, Matty, on TikTok was basically saying that it feels like Ice Spice could be put in a very similar situation, which, like, regardless of if Ice Spice asked to be on this collab or if she didn't, or or if this was something that happened later because Taylor's like trying to, again, distance herself from like the bad things Matty said by like aligning herself with somebody that Matty has hurt or whatever the case is. Regardless of how this single came to be, we are still in a situation now where Taylor is connected to somebody who did something hurtful towards Ice Spice. And now Ice Spice, because she's connected to Taylor through this song, is going to be asked to like essentially accept forgiveness for something that like she has never fully directly been apologized to for.
There's no way this is not all connected, because this is the first woman of color Taylor Swift has ever had on a feature, ever. And you're telling me that it's the exact person that Matty made offensive remarks towards. Like, make it make sense. And I saw another TikTok creator, and I can't find the video right now, but they were basically talking about this is not like a Taylor Swift feminism move. This is a Taylor Swift girl bossing move of like bringing feminism into the conversation when it benefits her. Because if Taylor Swift really wanted to be an intersectional feminist, she would have had Megan Thee Stallion on this track, and she would have publicly supported Megan Thee Stallion when she was going through her court case with Tory Lanez. So like the fact that like, oh, she's like an up and coming artist and she's the first woman of color Taylor's ever collaborated with, like, it's way too connected for this not to be PR. And it just feels a little sloppy on Taylor's behalf because we've seen her do this stuff before, so we know the game.
Yeah. Like that video that you're talking about, like it was so interesting because the person who created this, her name is Olivia L. And she was basically saying how like before all of the Taylor Matty stuff, before this thing came out, like she had made a video saying like, oh, it would be really cool if Taylor did a remix of Karma with Megan Thee Stallion. Like that would be such a good move. And then like didn't really talk about it more. And so then in this recent video, she was talking about how in making Midnights, when thinking about essentially how do I get the song of the summer, the choice would have been to, while making this album, work with Megan Thee Stallion because of like how big Megan Thee Stallion is. Because again, when Taylor worked with Kendrick Lamar for the Bad Blood remix, and that kind of turned into like a song of the summer moment, he was big. Like it was a big deal that she was working with him because he was like the moment. And like while Ice Spice is like killing it, she's not the moment in the same way that Megan is the moment. Yeah. And like how much more of like a statement it would have been for Taylor to work with Megan. And so it does feel weird when Taylor's never collaborated with a woman of color before to also go the route of this is an up and coming artist. They might mean nothing in 6 months time. Like, I'm not saying that that's going to happen to Ice Spice, but like she could be a flash in the pan. We don't know. Meanwhile, with Megan, Megan's already established. Her career is already there. There will never be a moment in like music history where somebody would look back on like a Taylor Megan feature and be like, who the fuck is Megan Thee Stallion? Where there is still the possibility of somebody being like, who the fuck is Ice Spice? Yeah.
Can you explain? So the joke that I was making earlier is that Sarah's making up Taylor Swift conspiracies. And I think it's important to like acknowledge here of, can you explain the like timeline that you pieced together of like when these things would have happened?
Yeah. So basically like at the time when I sang this, I didn't have that clip of Taylor being like, oh, like Ice Spice's team reached out, which again, I still don't think is relevant because also when you listen to the song, it doesn't sound like this was, it sounds like the remix was made quickly. Like, let's be 100% real. Like, obviously, like Taylor has posted photos of her and Ice Spice seemingly in a studio together. But again, who fucking knows like what could be going on here? I don't. But the timeline that I pieced together in putting on my Taylor Swift conspiracy theorist hat. So basically, I made a TikTok video and I started being like, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but I think based off of all the information that we know and the fact that Taylor Swift, who up until this point was like barely connected to the 1975 and Matty Healy, other than like those moments literally a decade ago. And it's like the amount of people I was photographed with a decade ago that like I still run in the same circle with and have no connection to anymore is a lot. Like in my mind, I'm like, I've never thought as of the 1975 fan, like, oh my God, Matty and Taylor are talking like as friends even. Like it's not a thought that I ever had. So in January of this year, when Taylor Swift came out at the 1975 shows and played like 2 or 3 songs, I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. I was like, why is this happening? And so then when I put my conspiracy theorist hat on because of this Ice Spice remix thing, I was like, okay, let me build a potential timeline here of like how this all makes sense. And my brain went, okay, all these Taylor fans keep talking about how now that we know that Taylor and Joe are broken up, a lot of Taylor fans prior to the Matty Healy potential dating announcement were like, oh my God, Midnight is My Relationship is Falling Apart album. And I thought that that was really interesting. Obviously, I don't really listen to Taylor, but when you listen back to the songs, they do feel like, wow, my relationship is slipping away from me. And having been in like a similar situation to that, I get it. Like I can understand how people can feel like that from those songs. But now with the Matty thing and people being like how quickly they got together, people are like, wait, is Midnight's a breakup album? And so with that information from Taylor fans, I'm like, okay, if all of the news around Taylor and Joe breaking up is true and it was like an amicable breakup, whatever the case may be, it's completely possible that the two of them broke up over last summer prior to the Eras tour announcing. But because Taylor is a businesswoman first and a real person second, Taylor was like, okay, I don't want us to announce our breakup because it's going to affect my tour. And Joe's like, I also have like 2 movies coming out and I would rather my movies
be connected to you.
Like, but not even that, but like, I would rather like my movies have a chance than like people just be talking about the fact that you and I broke up. Like, I don't want to have to talk about that on red carpets when I'm promoting my movies. So they're just like, okay, since we're still friends and this relationship just kind of ran its course, like we'll be seen together a couple times. Nobody will know what's going on, whatever the case is. And I think during this time, because Matty also talked about how they were almost featured on Midnights, I think Taylor and Matty get reconnected by Jack Antonoff. And so I think Taylor and Matty start texting and communicating autumn of last year. And I think, again, this is me being a psycho, I think that at some point during this texting and working together, they start to develop feelings for each other. And that's why the announcement of the Taylor and Joe breakup doesn't go to people through Tree. It goes through ET through Joe, because Joe is pissed off that Taylor is with Matty. Because also, like, fans make fun of the fact that Taylor makes fun of in her songs, like, Joe is poor. And, like, Matty comes from 2 relatively success, like, Matty's a Nepo baby. And so it's like, they're also, like, 2 very different people. Like Joe and Matty. And there's like rumblings about like Joe not liking Matty. I don't know what the deal is in that regard. So I feel like Joe was scorned because he was like, why are you like you could date anyone and this is who you're dating while I'm still pretending that we're together. So as to like deter attention from us breaking up so that the focus is more on like your tour. So then he drops the breakup information. Then in January, we have Taylor playing with the 1975. Again, I think maybe to like gauge their fans' interest in them being together and like see what the response is like and see if people are like happy that they're connected. And that goes relatively well. But then after that, we have the whole did he or did he not do a Nazi salute during a song about fascism? And then we have him going on a podcast and in February, laughing along with offensive racist remarks
derogatory
being said
comments,
about Ice Spice. We have him mocking Japanese accents, talking about internment camps. And we have the portion of the podcast where he talks about liking porn that brutalizes women of color. And that all happens in February, but we don't find out about the porn brutalization stuff until later. Okay. And then in March, we have the iHeart Music Awards, where Taylor Swift and Ice Spice are photographed together. Seemingly, that's where they met for the first time. But obviously, now that we have this other information, they probably met earlier to like maybe talk about the remix, whatever the case may be. But we have in March, Taylor meeting Ice Spice. So that's like a month after her new lover is heard saying and agreeing with offensive comments, borderline racist comments, actually racist comments about Ice Spice. And then we have April, where the news breaks from a rumor that maybe Matty and Taylor are in love.
Yeah. Wait. April was when we found out Joe and Taylor broke up.
Oh, right.
So like all of these like Matty, Ice Spice, all this stuff was happening like under the radar, and like them being broken up was under the radar until April, and that's when we found out about it.
Okay, and then like 2 or 3 weeks later, we get the rumors about Matty and Taylor. Then we get Jenna doing math about how far a flight is from Manila to Tennessee with time zone changes. We all start spiraling, and none of us have known peace since mid-April of this year. Like, there's been absolutely no peace, and so we have that. Then we have in May them being seen holding hands in New York, him being at like all of these Taylor concerts. Also in May, we have the never before heard clip from the podcast episode about Matty's racist porn tastes, and then we have Taylor announcing this Spice collab, and it all feels a little bit too PR. It all feels a little bit too clean up. It all feels a little bit icky. And like, I'm not saying that I think that if this had been planned prior to all the Matty stuff, that they should have taken this away from Spice. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. I just feel like at that point, I would feel like I was being used as a, see, she likes me, it's okay that I'm dating my racist boyfriend. Yeah, exactly. She did the, I have a black friend, therefore it's okay. Yeah. But we do have a TikTok from one of our faves at Not Wildlin, and he was like talking about this as if it was high school drama. And it was so funny because he was basically like, Taylor Swift is the class president. She's very popular. Some people don't really like her. Some people are like, she's maybe the best person. She's really scary. No one wants to be on her bad side, but she is the class president. Then we have Matty, who's like the class clown, and he's a joker. And he like sometimes says woke stuff and sometimes is really wrong. And everyone's like, can you shut the fuck up? Then we have the new girl in school, which is Ice Spice. And for some reason, Matty, on like the 3rd day of Ice Spice being at school, wants to make a racist joke about her. And Ice Spice doesn't know any of these people. Then we have Taylor deciding, for some reason, that she's gonna date Matty, and no one can say anything because she's the class president. And then also on the 3rd day of school, like right after this happens, publicly in front of everyone, she invites Ice Spice to like her birthday party, and she's like, no, you're gonna be at my birthday party, right? And Ice Spice doesn't know anything that's going on, and she doesn't have any friends yet, and the class president is inviting her to her birthday party. So she's like, yeah, I'll come to your birthday party. And this is like this is just the best, funniest like analogy I've seen about this whole situation. And it was like so funny because it was like, oh, see, like just because my boyfriend said something stupid, like Ice Spice is my special guest to my birthday party, so like we're cool, it's okay, I can still date my boyfriend because I invited Ice Spice to my party as my special guest. And like that's literally what it feels like. And I feel like that's why so many of us are like, this feels icky wrong. I also have seen several TikToks saying that like if you look at Ice Spice's verse on the remix, like you could read into it that she's throwing shade at Taylor. Yeah, like you could read into that if you wanted to. Taylor Swift. It's so funny like listening to the lyrics of Ice Spice's verse, because it really does feel like she's like, oh, bet you stupid bitch. Like it's literally what it feels like. I feel like in all of this, Ice Spice is the one who's aware of everything that's going on and playing the game a little bit better than everyone. Yeah, I mean, like, we're not the only people who are having this thought of like, it feels like Taylor's like, oh, but my black friend's on my song. It's okay that my boyfriend was racist because I'm not racist because I have a black girl on my song. Like we had, there literally was an op-ed from a HuffPost journalist titled "Taylor Swift is apparently dating an alleged racist and is now using a black woman to cover her ass," which like mic drop of a headline. I also think though, like calling Matty Healy is a racist feels very aggressive. Like this is a problematic man. I feel like calling him a racist is a bit over the top. And like, again, I'm not the only person who has said this, but also like, it's not my place to decide that, really. Well, I think it's kind of what we were just saying last time, is it's like, and I feel like we saw some TikToks about this week of it's like Matty Healy at his core trying to be a good person, but he doesn't know how to fucking do it. And he just keeps fucking up. Yeah, like the difference between somebody who's like a bigot and lives their life on like being racist all the time and like what Matty Healy has done is like two different things. And I think it's really hard as like social justice warriors of the internet. It's really hard to
where is the line of like,
Yeah.
can this man please stop fucking up?
It gets really complicated because I feel like it's so obvious that he's fucked up and that he's fucked up to an extent that he never has before. And because I feel like everything prior to this year of him doing things that are problematic are things where it was so easy to be like, but he's trying and he's just a white man who doesn't know how to talk about this stuff. Whereas now it's like, no, he's
not trying,
agreeing to bigoted comments, etc. And like it feels like he for some reason thinks he's like impervious to being wrong, and it's weird and confusing, and I don't like it, and nobody likes it, and everybody's mad at him because it's like, dude, you were just like the dude who pushed the line on your thoughts, and now you're like the dude who's like, now you're bringing your fans to the party where people are saying actual racist shit and being like, it was satire, it's okay. And it's like, no, Matty, don't bring your fans along to this ride. That's not fair. Like, don't do that.
Yeah, but the case in point is that people are writing headlines like this, so it doesn't really, like, the nuance is lost in headlines, right? We never have nuance in headlines. We know this. We know headlines say lots of crazy things, and this is an opinion piece. The point is that these words are being thrown around in association with Taylor Swift without the nuance of going through everything, and this is her presenting her PR plan.
Yeah. And so we're in this uncomfortable situation now where like Ice Spice was already involved in this conversation without wanting to be included in this narrative. And now she like wants to be included in this narrative because she wants the career boost that you get from working with Taylor Swift, which she seemingly agreed to prior to Taylor having anything to do with Matty. And now Ice Spice is fully in the middle of this controversy because you're not just going to pull a single because Taylor Swift's being connected to somebody who's being connected to racist comments and like is known as a problematic white man. Like, you're not going to do that for your career, no matter how much like it might feel gross now that like Taylor's essentially being like, but look at my black friends. Because also last night, so Friday night at her New Jersey show, which was like technically the New York show, Taylor brought out Ice Spice to debut the remix live. And so it's like Ice Spice is getting so much for her career out of this, but at the same time, it's like she's being used as a pawn in the Taylor Swift, Matty Healy PR cleanup, essentially. And like, that's not fair to Ice Spice.
No, it's not.
And like I already said, like, this is something that other white female artists have done before when they found themselves in murky water for appropriation or bigotry or racism or other things, where they then like invite that artist to come do something with them where it's like, see, look, we're publicly on the same team now, it's okay. And usually that white artist is more successful than the black artist in like mainstream music, and therefore the other artist like can't say no because it's a great career opportunity. But then that other artist that's now being featured on this song has to promote it, and in doing so essentially has to give this white person doing the absolute bare minimum their stamp of approval. Yeah.
That's why this whole thing is very problematic. The whole thing is problematic. I think like as like wrap up thoughts, I feel like there's been so much news that's coming out about this like every single day. I feel like by this time next week, we're going to have yet another update.
Yeah.
And it will be interesting to see if Ice Spice does any kind of interviews or promotions around this.
Yeah.
If anything, Ice Spice is fully aware of the situation at hand, and she's using this as a way to get her bag. Like, honestly, it's like instead of like being the butt of the joke, she's being like, no, you know what? Like, yeah, maybe this is fucked up. I don't know. These are just my assumptions. Yeah. Maybe she's like, yeah, this is fucked up, but you know what? This is how the world works. Taylor Swift is really fucking famous. I'm going to get my bag while I'm here. Like, you know what? And like, good for her. Like, if that's how she's coming into it, good for her.
And in a way, it's kind of like reparations, because she's using a white woman's tears and like fear of looking like a racist bigot to her advantage.
And not even that, but like one of the richest, one of the wealthiest artists. And it's
like good for her to like use the fact that Taylor Swift maybe feels guilty for once in her life to her advantage. Like, incredible. That's what you should do. But it is interesting just like seeing the PR moves that have been done before that are happening now. And it will be interesting to see like what press Ice Spice does do to promote this remix, and if people are going to like take that leap to ask her about Taylor's connection to Matty, and how she feels about it. Because also in past interviews, Ice Spice has also said that she's a fan of the 1975.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I don't see any world where Ice Spice is like, yeah, I'm annoyed. Like, I feel like there's only the world of Taylor Swift was so lovely to work with. Like, it was such, like, you know, like, there's not going to be any...
Yeah.
There's not gonna be any bad blood here. Like, we're not gonna get any juicy gossip or drama happening, because that would bury Ice Spice. And again, it's having a black woman having to apologize, or like not even like be this white lady's spokesperson. So
yeah.
It's just gonna be a mess, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens.
It just, like, when we explain it like this, it's just like so messy and like so sloppy.
It's
like,
so messy and sloppy.
I feel like Taylor's like showing us a little bit too much about herself, and she doesn't think she is.
Right? Like, but literally though, because like it feels really, really bad to say it, but this also feels like a collaboration out of fear of like Taylor herself being canceled and being
without having to make an actual statement.
Yeah, because Taylor's like, she's not going to, because again, she's not the one who said something. But I think there is that like fear from her.
She's like, no, I'm not racist.
Yeah, like that's literally what it feels like. So I don't know. I'm just really intrigued to see how this unfolds. I mean, you guys have been in our DMs for weeks, like saying your piece. And I know some of you guys are tired of all of this too. Some of you are living for the drama, and some of you are just like really stressed out because you like love Taylor and you don't know what the fuck she's getting herself into. And it's just been really crazy to like hear all the different perspectives and like how deeply you guys are thinking about this too. Is just like so interesting, especially like the Taylor fans that listen to the podcast who are reaching out and being like, I'm so sick of this. It's just like, it's been really interesting. And so we would love to hear more from you guys, because I'm loving the conversations we are having in our DMs. So you can come chat with us on social media about all this stuff. We are at Name3Songs on all platforms. If you want to talk to us one-on-one, you can also do that. I am at Sara_Fagan, and Jenna is at Jenna_Movement. So thanks for joining us this week on Name3Songs. And until next time, never let anyone make you feel bad about your favorite band.
And remember, you're never too cool to be a fangirl.
Don't forget to subscribe to be notified when each episode comes out, and leave us a 5-star review. They really help.
If you want to find out more about any of the sources you referenced in this episode, you can visit Name3Songs.com.